Yeah! Yeah! Oh yeah! 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 Oh yeah!
What is up, YouTube people? Eric here with Team Badman, and it is Friday again, so you guys know what that means. We have got more previews coming our way, and that means there's going to be another Quick Looks. Last week, we took a look at the Blue Resolute and Orange Retribution Masteries and their respective Goku and Vegeta stacks, as well as the exciting Assisted Kamehameha Ultra Rare card. And we saw a lot of promise in those ideas. Goku with the ability to constantly draw into cards from just about any zone, and Vegeta with the ability to heavily modify freestyle attacks, which in the past week have gone up considerably in price. His name cards are almost impossible to find right now in print for foil or in their respective foil, whatever it may be. But there's a lot of promise with those stacks, and we continue on this week by revealing not only the Black Conflict Mastery, but the Hercule MP stack, as well as Hercule's name cards, Hercule's Dynamite Kick, and Hercule's Grand Entrance, and the Jimmy Firecracker Ally. And all of these come together in what's bound to be a really, really fun package. So let's go ahead and take a look. First, before we get to any of the personalities or any of the name cards or anything, we're going to take a look at the Mastery, which is the Black Conflict Mastery. Now, as we know, Black has been a very, very sore point for a lot of players in the regard that it's got one overwhelmingly good Mastery in Black Devious, and one not quite so good Mastery in Perceptive. And now that Devious is on the frozen list, the question was raised, what's Conflict going to look like, and how is it going to compare to the old Devious Mastery? Well, I think in some ways it's a very useful replacement. It's an option that reflects a little bit on the old Devious Mastery, but not completely, while at the same time it's sort of its own entity, and it also harkens back to some of the old Score Masteries that we had. But at the same time, I'm not sure if it's going to see anywhere near the play that Devious had. But regardless, I feel it's a better option than Perceptive, and it can really be a lot of fun in certain decks. So the Black Conflict Mastery has a continuous power that says your attacks that deal at least 4 life cards of damage are considered to deal critical damage. So it lowers the threshold for critical damage effects by 1. The question how this interacts with cards like Namekian Stance or Namekian Deflection is kind of up for debate. I'm not exactly sure how that will be ruled at the moment, but it does open up a lot of former cards that were just shy of the threshold and got there with Devious to still deal critical damage now. When you look at cards like Black Defensive Burst or Android 18's Toss or Assisted Kamehameha now, all of those deal 4 life cards of damage, and they're still considered to deal critical damage, if they hit with this Mastery. So, Krillin will still have, the power behind his Destructo Disc even if it's dealing less damage. Some of the new Saiyan MPs are still going to have enough oomph to get some of those crits off, and it's still got a very useful place. The lack of modifier is going to be something for Devious players to get used to, myself included. But it's a really nice replacement option, something that could open up a lot of decks to much easier crit potential. On top of that, has a power that, again, allows you to discard a card from your hand. And if that card was styled, you can either gain 6 stages on your MP, or lower a player's Anger 1 level, or raise or lower a player's Anger 1 level. It's not just lower. So there's a variety of options that we can have, especially in the current meta. You still got ways to get rid of Black Declaration and Black Command and Black Corruption and all of those cards if they're discarded, go back into the deck or get placed in the play or whatever it may be. But in this case, as opposed to having hand disruption, you get a little bit more control on your end, you get some stage gain. Plus the Mastery helps kind of benefit Black's lack of anger control in a lot of ways, and it does this better than the idea of Perceptive ever could have, milling off cards for critical damage effects, or milling off cards and raising your anger. Yeah, that's cool, but it doesn't really stop your opponent's anger, and in a lot of cases Black decks used to have to resort to cards like Wall Breaker or Energized Strike or Shoulder Slam, Villainous Energy Beam, a lot of those to really get the anger hate out there. So there's a little bit of that here. I feel like it could open up to, not having to tech Wall Breaker necessarily and using some of the other lower anger cards like Shoulder Slams I mentioned before, Devastating Blow, Villainous Powerball, a lot of those. But it's not going to be an immediate replacement, and it's going to be something that players are going to have to kind of mess around with to see where the tech is going to fit. But it's still got the Black Conflict Mastery still has some of the stuff that Devious used to have. You can still run some of the tech. You don't need to change your deck up too much from a Devious deck in order to make it work. So I'll be using it for sure. And all in all, I think Conflict Mastery isn't too bad. It's gonna be relatively useful as we go. So now on to the reason we came here. We came here for the champ. We came here for the most electrifying man in DBC entertainment. We came here for Hercule. We came her. Huh. Anyway, the Hercule stack is a little bit more of a comedic stack compared to what we've seen in a lot of other stacks before, and that could not be exemplified any better than his level 1. In a similar way to Android 16 back in Perfection, Hercule has a parenthetical that plays across all of his levels that says you cannot use energy attacks in your deck, which plays perfectly to his character in the Dragon Ball Z manga and the anime, in which he couldn't actually use any kind of key manipulation. So, you know, it's going to be an all physical deck here, and well, it's a pretty good fit in this meta, so there's absolutely no complaints there. He's got a continuous effect that is both hilarious and kind of disappointing at the same time. First sentence on there says, your attacks deal plus 100 stages of damage. This would be my face if there wasn't that second sentence that says, your attacks cannot be modified by your effects. So it's strictly for comedic text. It's pretty good, and it's going to throw off some of the newer players who took a look at this and they're like, what? Are you serious with me? Are you real right now? But anyway, Hercule has a physical attack power on him for a measly 1 stage. You'll find that's kind of a theme with a lot of his attacks here. They don't deal a lot of damage, but he gains 5 stages, and he gets to search for a copy of Hercule's Dynamite Kick and place it into his hand. Now, the one thing I want to note about this stack before I move on to the next card is that if you look at Hercule's power levels, the higher his power level goes, the weaker he gets. So there's something kind of fantastic about that. The stronger and the more bravado he gets, the more scared he actually gets, and the less power he has in the long run. I think it's a fantastic little touch. It all worked out really well, and it's just a really fun level 1. It's gonna be something that you're gonna see using a whole lot of the hand advantage kind of approach, especially since it's got power that immediately searches out a card. I can see it being used in Blue Resolute, or maybe in Red Ruthless. There are a lot of ways that you can actually kind of use Hercule's ability to search out his name card to your advantage. And since we are talking about it, let's go ahead and talk about Hercule's Dynamite Kick. So Hercule's Dynamite Kick has a really fun parenthetical to it that says if this card is discarded, destroyed, or banished from your life deck, you get to place it on the bottom of your life deck. So this has some really interesting applications with masteries that may mill themselves, like Black Perceptive Mastery, or cards that allow you to search out of your opponent's life deck and they search through yours. Surprise Attack is a great example. Even if your opponent tries to search out your name cards with something like Black Scout Maneuver or Black Searching Technique, or Android 20's Domination, it just goes right back on the bottom of your life deck. So this can create some really interesting implications for the idea of survival mastery in Hercule, especially depending on how it gets ruled. Hercule's Dynamite Kick is the only card in your life deck, but you've got multiple copies. So it could be really interesting, or it could be just the exact same as we're used to, especially compared to Dragon Balls. But nonetheless, it's a really interesting application for some of those other cards that you may have. We may see Surprise Attack come back into vogue as a result of it in Hercule decks. Who knows? But Hercule's Dynamite Kick is a physical attack that cannot be stopped, and your MP gains 2 stages. However, it only hits for 1 stage of damage, which is completely unsurprising given that it's Hercule. But if it hits, which it always will, the attack stays in play to be used a 2nd, 3rd, and 4th time in a combat. So it finally beats out the Namekian backhand threshold for how many times a card can stay in play. Not only that, but it shuffles into your life deck after use. So it's one of those cards that just is a tiny little poke. It can't be modified in your early levels, but the later levels it can. And it's always going to go through. It's a really entertaining name card. So if you've got some weird hit effects to go along with it, say you've got Red Hop or something like that, or you use Black Easy Block in Perceptive Mastery, you can have some really fun interactions with this. It's a card that constantly replaces itself. You can get off a bunch of hit effects. it could be really cool even for the very, very meager amount of damage it does, and I think it plays in Hercule's stack perfectly. So Hercule goes to his level 2, and unsurprisingly his power level doesn't change one bit. It's the exact same as it was on his level 1. But his effects, of course, do change. His continuous says your named cards cannot have their damage modified by your effects, which is kind of a bummer, because that makes Dynamite Kick still it doesn't deal a whole lot of damage, but it doesn't affect all of your other attacks, so your other attacks can still swing with modifiers for decent amounts of damage. The next sentence says your opponent's attacks deal -3 stages and -3 life cards of damage. So just like Goku, it's like we're going back to the Garlic Jr. setup, but even better, even more ridiculous. He's all about wicking off that damage just by his posing, whatever you want to call it. The last sentence of his continuous says you can't use the effect of continuous drills, so it makes it less inclined to run in a drill deck. Maybe you've got some modifiers, maybe you run Orange Joint Restraint Drill or Black Smoothness Drill or something like that. In this case, that's not really going to do you too much good. But it's only one level and you're not usually too worried about it, especially if you're a deck that's like trying to level with it. It's a really interesting thing to add into that continuous effect, but I don't know, I guess I had something in mind with it. But again, Hercule's power is a physical attack, and this one just lets you search your life deck directly for a copy of Hercule's Dynamite Kick and place it into your hand. And this one goes for 2 stages this time, so it's a little bit stronger, a little bit more fitting with his level. Still not going to do a whole lot of damage unless you've got modifiers, but the whole point is getting out that Dynamite Kick and just constantly recycling that, so you're going to see a lot of actions out of Hercule on the early levels. While his level 2 may not necessarily gain stages back, instead you get out Hercule's Dynamite Kick, which of course gives you back stages. And the more we look at this stack, the more it seems to be a theme with Hercule is that he likes to gain stages, which I guess makes some kind of sense. He's getting more and more confident with it, and even though he's actually getting weaker in his power level, he's still having stages, which is a really, really big deal in this meta. I mentioned that a lot. So I can see decks that are, oriented on keeping the stages high and trying to wick off a lot of the physical stage damage with either damage prevention cards or physical blocks, things like that. I can see them being of use here in Hercule. He could be a really, really interesting answer to a lot of the physical decks that are out there right now, just slowly whittling them down over time, and just having some fun with a lot of these effects. It's very, very interesting to see. I'm definitely interested, based even on just these first 2 levels, to see exactly what players start coming up with. So Hercule level 3 is a hard stopping point in a lot of ways for Hercule, because he's got a parenthetical that says your opponent can't use effects that lower your MP 1 or more levels. So basically if you get to level 3, you're at a safe point right there, unless you get unleashed when you're at level 4 and you get knocked all the way down. But you don't need to worry about that with Hercule level 3. It's a nice little parenthetical to add there, and it's something that will be a benefit against the ever-growing popularity of unleashed decks as we go. This time instead of an attack, Hercule has just a continuous effect that says your anger cannot be lowered by critical damage effects, which is really kind of cool so far. Of course, Red and Rage is on the freeze list, so I'm not sure if we're going to see a whole lot of those decks that really try to capitalize on a lot of critical damage effects. But it's possible to see them in attacks that just constantly swing for a lot of damage. Yamcha would be a good example of this if he gets Orange Fierce attack out, or Orange Gohan, or Namekian Gohan, or whatever it may be. Decks like to stack up a lot of damage and just start abusing those critical damage effects are getting kind of slowed down by Hercule. So if you're planning on running him in Anger variant, this could be a lot of fun right here. Next, all of your attacks deal +1 stage of damage, which it's an adapt modifier. It's not too bad, and it's finally somewhere where your name cards can get modified. So you could see Dynamite Kick, slowly building up some power here, especially if you run a drill package. Since you're off level 2, you can use those continuous effects. So you can deal Dynamite Kicks for a pretty decent amount of damage. It's not too bad. Your damage modifiers are doubled as well, so that +1 that's on there becomes a +2 automatically. Your drill modifiers get doubled, mastery modifiers get doubled, so he's all about cranking out some damage here. It's not going to be a whole lot because PUR is super, super low, but there could be some massive modifier implication here. And your named cards can't have their damage modified and gain hit Raise Your Anger 1 level. So basically you're guaranteed 4 anger the turn that you have a Hercule's Dynamite Kick in your hand. It's kind of a downer that you still can't modify this Dynamite Kick, but for an attack that hits 4 times, keeps gaining you stages, and now gains you anger, I guess it just kind of makes sense. You're going to get some cards that just can't be modified at that point. If you run Black Backstrike, that's not going to do you too much good. Any other physicals that are considered named for your card effects. But, at the same time, this is an anger level for Hercule very easily, and it's something that I think a lot of decks are going to look at and be very interested in, especially with the Retribution Mastery being out and so popular. It's going to take some working around that level too, but this is a level that you can expect to get on and get off of really, really fast. So anger variants, this one's for you. And lastly, we end out the stack naturally with Hercule's level 4, which for the first time allows you to modify your named attacks. Hercule has a continuous power that says your attacks deal +2 life cards of damage. So we get to the Goku 3, Goku 4 kind of modifier there. And it applies to all of your attacks finally, so you can actually pump up the damage from Hercule's Dynamite Kick, deal a considerable amount of damage there. And with the apparent ease in which it seems that you can get to level 4, this can be a really, really good ending point for it. With Dynamite Kick, you're guaranteed to hit for 8 life cards total of damage with the attack, and then it goes right back into your life deck. So this can be a real closer level, especially if you've got a bunch of other modifiers to pump up Hercule's Dynamite Kick, as well as a lot of your other attacks. Of course, to pump out the damage, you're going to want to use some of those life card dealing physicals, because like I mentioned, Hercule's power level it's one of the worst in the game for an MP stack, which makes perfect sense because it's Hercule. But, this opens up Dynamite Kick to a lot of endgame combo potential. Not only that, but whenever you use a named card, destroy the top card of your opponent's life deck and lower each player's anger 1 level. So if you're trying to utilize those continuous effects of Dynamite Kick in order for some of your fast leveling off of 3, it's going to slow you down on 4, where you're basically going to sit with 0 anger if you keep utilizing your named cards. So this is a slowing down point for those anger decks, but it's one where you're going to want to go for a little bit more of a beatdown approach. Anything else that's going to help you modify a lot of your attacks is going to be just great. Ruthless Mastery could be a lot of fun for this. Blue Resolute Mastery would be great. And it opens up the potential of Black Conflict Mastery to deal crits relatively easily, especially if you've got some other modifying cards out there. Say you get, Black Chopping Drill out at some point, or you get the new black card that attaches in all of your style attacks, deal +1/+1, a Pseudo Devious modifier. It's really easy for this to just deal a lot of damage. It's easy for this level to be exploited for a lot of an endgame kind of idea. But it makes sense for level 4 because you have this kind of uphill climb through unmodifiable named cards, and these weird kind of cutesy gimmicky things. And I think as a result, Hercule is going to be a fun stack, but I don't know if he's necessarily going to be kind of the top tier that we were really hoping he would. Of course, we're still waiting on one more name card right here, and we do have an ally to talk about, so that could change your perspective. But I think as he currently sits with the deck, we would have to see what comes in the Hercule starter deck to know exactly what we're dealing with. But I think he's just going to be fun. He'll be something that you want to play because you want to mess around. But he's not going to be the big deal, heavy meta Worlds player that we're necessarily going to expect. Of course, I could be wrong with, the ability to not use energy attacks and constantly gaining stages off a lot of your attacks. He could be a great anti-physical deck, especially if you've got a bunch of ways to block, or you use him in styles that, natively block cards. Maybe you're in, orange or something like that and utilize your blocking drills, or maybe you just run a whole lot of blocks in something like Red Ruthless where you can keep reutilizing cards like Red Power Lift. He could be very interesting for that, but we're just going to have to see. Along with Hercule's Dynamite Kick, he also has an event name card called Hercule's Grand Entrance, which has a really interesting timing to it. It's an instant effect card that you utilize after your opponent performs an attack, which is the first card of its kind. In this case, you search your life deck for an ally, and you put them into play at 5 stages above 0, and for the remainder of combat, that ally can make actions regardless of Hercule's power stage. And now this makes perfect sense with the ally of the day, Jimmy Firecracker, who of course can use his power as long as Hercule's AMP regardless of the power stage, but his power is essentially a free Omni block. He can stop physical or energy attack and gets shuffled right back into the life deck after use. So if you're a deck that has a lot of ally tech and likes to continually pull them out and utilize a whole lot of defensive actions and blocking, this is going to be the ally for you. It works really easily for Hercule, so that way in a pinch you always have a block that you can utilize. Of course, if you're running ally tech, you're going to have to change it up a little bit because a lot of the ally tech in the game is actually very energy based, so you might want to polish off some of those sobering hammers and get those out. Maybe run them in tag team mastery so that you can get out Jimmy Firecracker early and just keep utilizing ally recursion. Who knows? But this event it's definitely the first of its kind, and it adds an extra benefit to Hercule in an emergency escape route if you need it. You're gonna probably end up seeing it used a little bit. It'll be a lot of fun due to its timing, but I'm not super sure how much it really bolsters the idea of using Hercule as a really big meta choice. I think it could be a whole lot of fun, and he's got some really interesting applications there, but I don't know, it's a tough call for me personally. Let me know what you guys think about the Hercule stack down in the comment section below. I would love to see any ideas that you guys have, any interesting thoughts. If you're already scheming some deck ideas up in your brain, be sure to let them out. We still got plenty of time before the season starts. So Hercule could actually have some really interesting cards that work in his favor. He could have some really powerful physical attacks that he may be able to utilize, some new cards that are considered named. Who knows at this point? But Hercule, all in all, is a fun kind of stack that doesn't take itself too seriously, but when it really wants to, it can crank up the action, and I can see this one being just a whole lot of fun. I don't know how it'll fare in Draft or in Rainbow or in just about anything, but it's going to be a fun option. And of course it comes with the Black Conflict Mastery, which I don't think it's quite as good as Devious, but I think it's a relatively suitable replacement, and it will find plenty of play as we go. So thank you guys so much for watching this quick looks of Hercule. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to click the like button down below. If not, click the dislike button down below and let me know what you guys didn't like so I can fix it for next week's quick looks. I'm always looking out for that, so please be sure to let me know. Also, if you guys haven't hit that subscribe button down below, please be sure to do so you can follow this series and all of our other series. We've got a whole bunch of great stuff coming up here really soon, so be sure to keep an eye out for all of that. And lastly, if you haven't found us on social media, all those links are down below too. So you guys can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Libsyn, which is podcast hosting. We'll have that up very soon here, which will be the first Team Batman podcast. So you guys will get to hear all about that. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So be sure to check those out. Anyway, that's going to do it for this week's Quick Looks for Hercule. Be sure to tune in next week for the new Saiyan Mastery and for the Team Gohan stack. I'm Eric with Team Badman signing out. So thank you guys for watching. Jumped the gun there. I'm sorry about that. And like always, stay bad. See you guys next week. Catch you later.